I'd like to share with you from our heart and what we learned were 4 musts for finding contentment with cancer. All right, this video is a little different than the last few. I don't have to say that I'm not a doctor because we're not going to be talking about medical advice. This is more getting to the heart of our journey that we've been through and wanting to share things that we've learned with you. Before we dive into the 4 musts, I want to clarify, when I say contentment, that is different than complacency. And so I'm making a distinction between those terms. I'm not saying that we should strive for complacency with cancer, like we should strive to stay with cancer, but contentment, which is a state of being at rest even as we act and fight earnestly against our cancer, we can still find contentment, which is where joy and peace can be found in the midst of the storm that we call cancer. So with that in mind, let's get into must number 1. You must mourn the life lost to enjoy the life gained. What I mean by that is life will never be the same after a cancer diagnosis. And I don't mean it will never be good or it will continue to be bad if that's the place that you are in life. What I do mean is that you have been changed. We have been changed by this journey. And so no amount of effort will bring life back to what it was prior to this trial that we're going through. And so for us, we had to allow space to mourn the loss of that life and not be stuck in a cycle of nostalgia and pining for the past, but looking with hope and joy to the future. And so that was an important process for us to separate and say that part of our life, that season of our life is over. And now we move on to find joy and peace and contentment and blessing in this season of life that we're in. So you must mourn the life lost in order to enjoy the life gained. Must number 2, you must prioritize health over cancer. We had to learn early on that the goal of our actions should primarily be to live a healthy and balanced life, because that's the most powerful cancer fighting tool we had. We found that if we focused on cancer day in and day out, on efforts to fight cancer, on efforts to overcome this trial that we're going through, that focus on the cancer was an inherently negative focus, and we would burn out. And so we had to transition our thinking to one of health, one of how do I bring life into my body? How do I eat so that I feel well? How do I sleep and rest? And how do I exercise and invest in health? Because that is a powerful cancer fighting tool. And so seeing the things that we choose to do as bringing health to our bodies was one of the most important things for us to be okay with all these changes we were making, to be content in this journey that we were in that was painful and difficult. So our third must is you must raise your hopes and lower your expectations. That might sound cynical, but bear with me. I often say, if you know me in my personal life, I often tell people the key to a happy life is lowered expectations. And that's obviously said very tongue-in-cheek, a little bit sarcastic, but there is a nugget of truth there that I mean often. That whether it's in relationships with people or in circumstances in life, if we set our expectations at a really high level, that also sets our bar for contentment. It sets our bar for what brings us joy and what discourages us. And so when we set our expectations really high, particularly when it comes to things outside of our control, we're just asking to get knocked down, lose hope, and be discouraged. When we lower our expectations, what this allows is for the things that we really don't know what's going to happen It allows for those to not catch us so off guard, those things that might have been discouraging before, that it crushes us. It allows us to go, okay, another way of saying it that you may have heard is hope for the best, plan for the worst. And so this became really tangible for Rachel and I early on as we, right in the first few weeks after the diagnosis, we had to process this new world we were in. Rachel was 27. We weren't thinking about death. We weren't thinking about sickness. Our youngest was just barely 1 year old. But all of a sudden we were thrown into that world. So our expectation that was here went, whoa, this is much lower than our expectations. And so we spent some time processing and planning potentially for the worst, thinking about what would it mean for this diagnosis to take Rachel's life, for Rachel, for me, for our kids, for our family, for this process of fighting cancer to take a turn that no one wanted it to. And that gave us a freedom to speak those things, and it removed the power of them. It made them less scary to think about as we just openly discussed the what ifs. And to balance that is not a place where you want to stay. You don't want to always be talking about the negative. You don't want to have your lowered expectations be something that steals your hope or your anticipation for the future. And so that's why we balance that with, we must raise our hopes as we lower our expectations. We must see the best case scenario as something tangibly possible and work towards that. We have to be excited about the future. We have to be excited about moving into a place of remission. We have to be excited about that tropical trip we want to take next year. That's why we raise our hopes while we lower expectations to give us the best of both worlds, so that we aren't crushed if bad news comes, but we are hopeful for good news. All right, must number 4. You must identify your anchor. This is maybe the most important one that is the closest to our heart. And what I mean by you must identify your anchor is you need to identify that which is bigger than yourself that you're holding to in this storm. Life has just taken a turn if you're in the cancer world. Life has thrown you for a loop, and things that you did not expect, that you don't feel like you deserve, have just been placed in your lap. And that's when the test of what is tethering you to things like hope and contentment. That's the question. For us, for Rachel and I, it was our Christian faith. Our faith in a God who loves us, who cares for us, who is with us, who has suffered like we've suffered, and is with empathy walking this path with us and seeing good come out of it and great blessing come out of it, was an incredible anchor. Let me share an analogy to help identify why it's important to know what your anchor is. Imagine you're on a lake in a little fishing boat. The water is calm, there's no wind, and you've thrown an anchor overboard. You feel it hit the bottom, but after that, as you're fishing, you feel the boat drifting to and fro. The line of the horizon changes as your boat swings. You don't really feel the anchor in that case. Now, take that same situation and put your boat in a rushing river. The moment that you throw that anchor out, you feel its pull. You immediately are tethered to it in a way that keeps you at a static point in the river. That is what cancer did in our life. It created a turbulence that revealed what our anchor was. So the worst thing you can do is go into that situation without an anchor. You will be rushed by the river, out of control, having no ability to see something bigger than yourself and have hope in. And so that's our biggest encouragement to you, is to identify your anchor. To know what is bigger than yourself that you hope in? Where does your hope lie? Because that is what will help tether you in the storm of cancer. All right, those are the 4 musts that we learned early on in our journey that we want to share with you. If you want more videos like this that are more about our heart and what we've learned in our journey, separate from the medical world, let us know below. Otherwise, be safe, be blessed, and know that we are here for you if you have any questions. And most importantly, if you don't know what your anchor is, we are here and would love a conversation. Comment below or email us on our website and we'll get in touch.
In the great outdoors, forever free.